Welcome back to Another Triathlon Podcast brought to you by Mana Apparel. This week, there's one race that everybody's talking about, and that is absolutely the T100 in Dubai. And what a weekend of racing it was. There were some epic battles out there, some surprise finishes, and it was just a blast to watch. But before we get started in all of that, I wanted to let everyone know that we're now up on YouTube. So you can see the faces behind the names, watch them on those long trainer rides if you need something to keep you entertained. Hopefully, find us entertaining enough, but we can also be found on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So go check it out. Give us a subscribe if you can and let us know your thoughts. And we want to get a lot more interactive with our audience this next little while too. So stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram. We're going to be putting up some posts for questions about racing training or just any thoughts on the races that are going on at the pro level, or we always love some gossip. So go check us out. We're definitely online and want to hear more from you. But let's jump into what we usually chat about to start here. I am joined by Josh. Josh, what are you up to these days?
A little less than I thought I was going to be up to last week.
Yep.
The job search and life and everything kind of got in the way of some of the additional training. I had like a pretty big week in line, but missed a few workouts, which is abnormal for me when it's full season. But I have that off-season mentality, I think, a little bit right now. So missing a workout here and there is actually kind of therapeutic at times, and trying to get a lot of things taken care of and get my whole career situation finalized. There's a lot of good opportunities in the works there. And I'm actually going to be heading down to Miami tomorrow and chasing a potential opportunity there, and also catching a crazy finish to a 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents race. We can talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, I had a good week of training though. I still milking a little bit of Achilles tendonitis and stuff that I've battled with and dealt with all along, but it seemed to flare up a little bit after the 2 marathons, and going to be doing a lot more PT work, strength work, posterior chain type strengthening, and going to really help the build going into next season, and officially decided to shut it down for this year and not go after that half marathon PR. So no reason to chase something that I don't need to, and really start to focus on a good core and base for next year, and get in a good spot to start chasing and racing in April, probably at Oceanside. So that'll be cool. There's a good chance Oceanside will be my first race, which I didn't think I'd be talking about again, but here we are, going back to Oceanside and swimming with the sea lions and climbing hills and having a fun run. Like, if anyone ever wants me to be on that run relay team, I'd jump on that in a second. It's a fun run course. But yeah, and yesterday I had my longest ride. God, I mean, it's in a long time. So I did a 2-hour, 45-minute brick session progressive ride. So I had 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes with a good progression up in each interval without any breaks in between, and held my zones and hit all the watts and did it all in virtual training peaks, which was really cool to do and test out. And it was nice not to have to worry about pairing my phone to the Zwift trainer, to the computer, and having all that. It went right from my training peaks, downloaded it right into the workout that existed on my today's workout. And it was really neat. There's not a lot of people in it, but there is going to be, and I think it'll be a really neat tool for a lot of people to have that opportunity, and coaches and athletes to have that capability of that nice smooth transition. It's the old Indie Velo platform, and so there's a lot of work that's already gone into it. You add the Training Peaks features that we all use daily anyways with our coaches, and you go to work, and then all of a sudden you look and you're drafting someone, and it's actually giving you the drafting benefit, and the wind direction is actually playing a factor if you start getting into some like crit racing and racing simulation. So really neat. It was just kind of fun to play around in it, and I had a good ride and had a good run off the bike. So that was the end of my bad week. It ended up well.
Yeah, I actually gave it a try too. I've just done one ride on it so far. They definitely have some polishing to do to be something that is competitive more with the Zwift, especially on the avatars and that kind of thing. But I do like how they have some additional factors. Like you said, the wind direction was kind of cool with the elevation, and they've definitely got a solid foundation to jump off of. And yeah, curious to see where they go with it. And I don't ever use built workouts in my own training. It's funny, as a coach, I have all of the workouts built for my athletes, but my own coach is a little bit more old school and doesn't do it. And I don't like to use erg mode for workouts anyways. So haven't tried that part of either that Zwift or Training Peaks, but it is nice just to have another platform to play around with and see where they go with it. Hopefully it's something good.
Yeah, I think we all know competition in this sport's a good thing. And
Absolutely.
the more podcasts, the better. The more training opportunities, the better. So I think it's just another opportunity for people to test it out. And for somebody, it's probably going to be better. And like you said, I think there's going to be some bugs and things that need to be worked out. One of the ones I noticed, and I didn't realize it until I checked my workout, was my final progression was the 5 minutes. And I think it was supposed to be a zone 3, and I ended up riding in like zone 4, zone 5. And that's what auto transferred from Training Peaks built into the actual virtual world. So it was off there. Everything else was right. And I'll turn erg mode off at times. And a lot of times my coach knows I use the erg mode and I like to get that time on the pedals that I don't get. And you know this, winter time here, we don't get to ride outside. So as many pedal strokes as I can get at pressure, the better. And I don't mind doing 2 hours and 45 minutes without a break. And I'll put that time in. So I did try it in erg mode last night. I will do it both ways. I'll take erg mode off. Typically, I'll do erg mode maybe for the warm up and cool down and not have to worry about it and shifting. And then I'll turn it on or turn it off for the actual main set. So get a little bit of work on shifting and changing gears and going up the hills and things like that.
I find it just stay a little bit more mentally engaged. And, having zones, it's good to have that range. So if you're feeling good, you push to the top end. Feeling not so great, you can kind of hang out at the lower end, because outside there definitely is no erg mode, but a balance is really good, especially when you have those hard workouts. If you're mentally fatigued and just tired, being able to just set it and hang on is never a bad thing either for athletes. So yeah, good to play around with both of those.
I'm going to miss my temporary setup. I've been fortunate enough to have the wife not kill me while it's been set up in our living room and before I bring it back downstairs to the basement for the winter. So it's been nice having it up here. It's also been nice to be able to work out and she's right there and doesn't need to come downstairs and interrupt. So it's been a treat, but it's also much more humid and warm upstairs. So back down in the basement where I can control the temperature a little bit better.
There we go. See, I love my basement pain cave, just away from everyone. There's nothing else to do down there but to just sweat it out.
Yeah, exactly. How was your week? You keep adding volume and getting after it.
Yeah.
In a way, I think I saw something about maybe adding another race or something like that sooner.
I was this close, as close.
Speaking of booking flights last minute.
Man, and that's where it stopped, was when I looked at flights. But yeah, kind of week 2 building back into Ironman training. And at this point, it's all about just volume, getting that aerobic volume foundation, ton of strength training right now. So as of right now, 0 intensity, just building up that aerobic base. And yeah, after watching the T100, I was feeling so fired up between Kona, watching T100, just geeking out on triathlon. And I'm like, well, technically I have a spot to 70.3 world. I wonder, I've been back training for triathlon for 2 weeks. Do it. Yeah, that went until I looked at flight costs, and last minute flight costs to New Zealand are not attractive. So it kind of ended there.
Yeah, not like the Boston to Miami flight that I just booked. It's a little easier to do that last minute.
Yeah, it was kind of like Kona level cost to fly last minute to there.
That's before you even talk about accommodations or anything else over there.
Yeah. So unfortunately, will not make it over there. As much fun as it would be to just go kind of do the race, but geek out being back in that atmosphere, because it was so much fun being in Kona, being in that world champ atmosphere with everyone out there, the whole industry and stuff. It's just,
yeah,
I love that. When you can geek out and everyone else is there to geek out and do the same thing, it's just so much fun when you spend most of the time training in a basement pain cave.
Exactly. And you could kind of see it on a lesser age group level this weekend at Dubai. You could just see that different level of intensity. And even with the athletes that weren't racing, how cool and interested. I mean, they were all in it and it was really neat to see.
Lots of fun stories and stuff. Yeah, and that did broke out the lactate testing kit, which I kind of forgot I had, but my coach was like, hey, let's find out some zones. I'm like, lactate seems like a much more fun way to do it on an aerobic run than doing a threshold test. So I am all in.
Nice.
And yeah, once again, turns out I'm not running fast enough on my zone 2 runs, which is good and bad, because 2 weeks ago I did not have the fitness to run it. It's kind of that weird in between where I've got the aerobic foundation, years of training and stuff like that, but kind of don't have the leg strength to sustain what would ideally be more of that top end of my aerobic zone. So building back the strength and just kind of learning where that ceiling is, where I'm still effectively working on that aerobic foundation to make sure that I set myself up. So I need to get fit enough to run in zone 2 at this point. It's funny, with zone 2 training, it's kind of almost like a ladder. When you start out, it feels like you're barely jogging and you're going to be at the top of that zone 2. But the fitter you get, the harder it gets, to the point where when you're super fit and ready, zone 2 is not easy anymore. The pace just increased to the point where there's a lot more muscular stress. So it does feel hard. I'm kind of at this weird in between where I have some of the speed from the training, but not the endurance, because I just haven't been doing it.
Yeah. Your body, your heart and everything are capable of handling it. But then that zone 2, I guess it's spread out, but it's still not capable of being held long enough for you yet. So that was the difference in my marathon training that I noticed. Like for the most, like you get into that type of training, and the Ironman full distance training, it's a different beast what you end up getting in your aerobic capacity, and then the muscles start coming along with it. And like you said, it's like, I can't believe I'm holding this pace for 3.5 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That's what they used to say back in the Mark Allen days. He'd, at the beginning of the season, he'd let everyone go. He'd be way out the back and no one's anywhere near him. And then he would put in that mass tone training, essentially zone 2, for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden in zone 2 is something that's just blowing everyone out of the water, when it's definitely a process. But if you're doing long distance endurance sports, it is a key part to the training and foundation of it, to be able to go fast, to be able to hold it. That's where we see a lot of these, I think, athletes who are focusing on the T100 race series that maybe hadn't put in the miles for Ironman. You see a lot more breakdown in the second half of the race, and there were a lot of comments about that after the race in Kona from all these athletes who are maybe doing a little bit more speed work, a little bit more intensity, a little less volume. When it comes to the back half of that marathon, even with these super shoes, which definitely help prevent a lot of the breakdown, there's no doing anything about putting in those miles when it comes to running fast in the second half of a marathon.
And I think too, with the Ironman training, when that's all people did was they focused on Ironman, before we had all these options and series and races and mid course and short course and back to long course, and it's kind of made it difficult for the pro athletes. They've got a ton of opportunity, but they've got a lot of decisions to make now too, and we've seen that impact a lot of people's seasons here late, especially as people start to break down. But you start to notice it on the age group level too, where the ability to race over and over and over again early in your career, like me, gets a little difficult until you've had those years of that volume stacked on top of each other, because the recovery process takes longer until your body's used to putting up that volume. And I've noticed it a lot at the end of this year, where this recovery from Chicago and then the virtual marathon has been a lot longer than anything else I've done this year, but I haven't done 2 marathons in 3 weeks before either. So you start to realize how stacking these builds start to add up to, and how important it is to have that consistency. So for me, it's been a good eye-opening end of the year, and just a reminder to be patient with the recovery process too.
Yeah, and definitely the right call, kind of scrapping that half marathon and give your body a chance to recover, especially with Oceanside, because it is fairly early season, giving your body a chance to relax, to recover, to rest, and then start to build back again.
Even my 5K turkey trot's going to be a trot. I'm not even going to... No PR 5K either, though. It's actual true turkey trot.
That's funny. One of the things with like athletes I coach is I find a lot of times you almost have to convince them that they need that downtime. And I totally understand. There's this fear. You've worked so hard all year to get this fit. You want to keep getting fitter. You want to keep getting faster. And the reality is, if you don't let your body recover physically, like we're talking hormonally, like mentally, there's so many aspects of recovery beyond just muscle soreness. And a lot of athletes will just take that muscle soreness as the indicator whether they're recovered or not. But that is just the start. That's the first round of the recovery. So in order to actually build back better, you need to let your body hit a point where it can handle that workload again, and not just keep slogging and digging yourself in a hole.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this too, and it's not new information. I think the new technology does back this even more so, at least on my end too, because I love the data, I love the Whoop, I love the training stress and the heart rate variability and all that stuff, and it's literally telling me what my coach has been thinking all along, and she's old school like your coach, and it's like, throw the damn data out the window. I just tell me how you feel, and a lot of times I feel good, my legs feel strong. So this has also been a reminder that technology actually does back a lot of this thought process up too, because my resting heart rate has been elevated since the marathon. My HRV is not getting as high as it normally did, and my body's still trying to recover. So it was neat to see that actually back up everything that she was already thinking too. So for a newer athlete like me, like, okay, it's not like I don't trust her, but it's also the science and the data is there too.
Just think, when you can quantify it to that degree and okay, legitimately, like, you're not as good as where you were. Like, you're not ready to perform or train like you were earlier in the season.
And it's a notch for the technology too on its own as well, that it does work if you wear it 24/7 and actually trust it and let it do its job.
Yeah, and it's not only an age grouper thing. Like we saw, if you watched that T100, that lobby chat that they had with like Jack Kelly and Jan Frodeno and stuff, the going commentary when they were talking to the athletes was just, everyone looks tired. Like, they're just tired at this point.
Where are we again? I guess
Right?
there's a tall building. Oh yeah, Dubai.
Oh man, after a race season that starts so early in the year, and some like Sam Long started in January, like that is.
Well, he'll say December because he did Indian Wells. He was like, that's the start of my season.
No downtime.
So legit 12 months.
Yeah, just straight. And you saw he came out with a bang, went out hard, and then he had some great performances, but it was definitely in the front end of the season.
He was peaking early season.
And we'll definitely chat more about that as we go along, because as I mentioned, we are going to be talking all about the T100 here. But before we jump into that, let's get our usual segments going. Josh, you had no easy job this week trying to narrow down what the social media post of the week would be. But what did you come up with?
Man, we chatted about this before we started recording. Actually, the one that I decided to go with was one of the last ones we thought of, and I had forgotten that Sam Laidlow put out a pretty epic reel about what it's like to cheer at one of these events and how you don't cheer, actually.
Yeah,
how not to cheer, and it's a pretty hilarious. It's almost like a Saturday Night Live skit, but it's pretty awesome. The cheering that he did come up with, and how he helped root the ladies on, or not root the ladies on. But yeah, check out Sam's Instagram account. There's so much T100. We talked about this. There's so much stuff out there about the T100 this weekend that you could go look up, and I mean, even Google at this point, because some of it's so epic. But the Sam Laidlow post, it's his most recent post other than his pinned ones on his Instagram account. It's a picture of him and Taylor Knibb. He's about to high five. So check that out. It's hilarious. Get your volume up, listen to it, read captions. You'll enjoy it if you haven't already.
You know what I miss? Before T100, when it was still like the PTO races, before it got so, like, now it's legitimately serious with lots of money on the line for the series and stuff. But a couple years ago with these T100 races, they used to do the pros on either side, shirts off for the people going by. You'd see like the Norwegians and everyone like shirts off, waving them around, cheering them on. Where it had a little more of a party atmosphere, because yes, they're taking the race seriously, but it wasn't this series and this intense in it and stuff. And the men and women on either side would do it to cheer each other on, and those were always entertaining posts too. But I think now they're a little bit more focused and dialed in and professional on it. But those were some fun videos after those races.
Especially at this race too, where so much was on the line, would be my guess. That like, all right, in the heat. Now, not so much the men. Now, Sam was there and wasn't racing, so for him it was a little easier to do something like this. Mm-hmm. But if you're racing and you're Martin Van Riel, you're in your hotel watching the ladies race on the day before, and the ladies, you're just exhausted. So do you get out there in time, or get out there and watch the guys race? And most of them did. But one of the things that came out of all of this too was the lack of crowds in Dubai too. So it's like lack of crowds on the T100 circuit with the way they set it up. So that's something I would imagine they're going to be working on trying to figure out. And it's still in its infancy type.
Mm-hmm.
sport for most of the world. And I think this season helped build some momentum, and we'll see. But it is tough when you don't have the crowds in your world championship.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get a lot more into the broadcast and what went down within the race as well. But okay, I had one what the F, but then thought of another one here too, so it might be a double feature today. So the first one, since we're already talking PTO, is Jan Frodeno raced in Dubai this weekend. Little note, apparently he rocked up to one of the fun runs in full carbon shoes and kit and just raced it hard and blew everyone away. How mad would you be if you show up to your 5K park run or something and Jan Frodeno is out there to smash it? What do you think?
Man, it's not like it shouldn't be expected. I mean, you still look at him and it's like, and now he might have looked a little tired by the end of the race on Sunday, but he's still in phenomenal shape and he could still throw down with most of these guys on tour if he wanted to compete again. But yeah, it's I wasn't surprised to see him out there. I was surprised to see Jack Kelly dropping people during the race, and I guess dropping the likes of Lucy Charles and Chelsea Sodaro during their run together during the 5K. But what a cool atmosphere to be around that. It's a nice, awesome addition to the T100 Dubai. And I think a lot of people did enjoy that as well. But yeah, Jan doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
You're not that competitive kind of thing. Like, even if you went out there saying, I'm just going to cruise it and have some fun, once the gun goes, how do you? Yes.
No, and he's still the GOAT, and he's got all these other people trying to take over that status. And it's like, nope, I'm still here, guys.
Oh, man. We don't usually do this, but I've got a what the F round 2 here. This weekend was one of my favorite races I've ever done, the Laguna Phuket Tri over in Thailand. And that one is so much fun. Crazy hot, insane hills on the bike, but an absolute blast out there. But coming across the finish line, we had the winner of the men's race, Hayden Wilde, came across and they weren't quite ready for him yet. It was funny to see. He goes across the line and kind of mimes the finish line tape and pretends to raise it up, even though there's nothing there, and then they kind of scramble up the side and eventually get him his tape in there. But looked pretty entertaining. They were not ready for how fast he was, and he absolutely smashed the course record in the running of it too. So kudos to him. But man, how would it feel to be too fast for the finish?
And they had other races going on, so there were other people crossing the line, which is why they weren't ready, I would imagine. You've been there and done that, so I would imagine there's probably a sprint going on and all this other stuff going on at the same time. And anyway, we were talking before the show too. It happened at the new 70.3 in Chile too. The two female pros, there was no tape ready for them because there was a age group male in front of them who was trying to finish his own race. Didn't realize there was a sprint finish for first and second in the female overall. So they did get the tape up, but barely. So along the same lines, there's a third WTF.
Definitely.
If you're an age group male, pay attention to the ladies behind you.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy that's blocking the sprint finish at the end there.
And by the way, two Mana athletes as well. So those Mana kits looked good at that sprint finish.
Yeah. There's a good shot of them at the end, just dropped after the finish line.
Yeah.
I will say, they're so fast, the Mana kits, they breathe well in the heat and make more arrows.
Not bad. And one of them, professional debut. The other one's an up and coming. I mean, pretty awesome to see.
Very cool to see. And then while we're talking about Laguna Phuket, we should also mention Kate Waugh was the winner on the women's side too. But
right, surprise.
Never get the chance. That race is so much fun. They do an after party, right? There's a whole banquet afterwards with music and food and drinks, and man, it's just such a fun place to ride. Rough roads, crazy hills, but amazing atmosphere out there. So definitely recommend anyone who can get the opportunity, definitely go over there and do it. We also saw some fun shots of Hayden Wilde giving Will McCloy, the commentator from Super Tri, a little pat on the bum as he went by for a bit of encouragement. Although Will would say he was feeling very slow at that moment as the Falcon flies by him.
It was pretty neat to see how Will reacted, but I think it was that post about Hayden slapping his butt as he passed him by, and then it was a post of Will riding a motorized chair up his staircase because he was so out of shape post-race. So kudos, Will. Good job.
Oh man, definitely got to have some fun with it. And that's one of those races where, yeah, they take it seriously, but it's definitely a fun atmosphere at the same time. And if you ever need some heat prep, maybe that's where I need to go before Taiwan. Just head over to Thailand because that heat and humidity is something else.
The water can't even get out of you.
And that's a weird one too, because it goes from a saltwater swim to a freshwater swim. So you go from like having the buoyancy of the saltwater to not in this really, I mean, not the best.
With no wetsuit on, so it doesn't matter.
And then you get to go into the heat on the bikes. So
Yeah.
bit of an adventure on that one. Well, let's jump into it. The race we were all watching and talking about this weekend, the T100 in Dubai. It was the grand final there for all the final points going into the series, where this would determine who was going to get an automatic contract and who would be named the series winner, which definitely made it some exciting racing. We had an epic day out there, and we'll give a little rundown of what happened. It was, on both the men's and women's side, a race that you don't want to miss because it did not go to plan for a number of athletes, which kept it interesting. But we'll start with the women's race and then talk a little bit about it, and then we'll go into the men's. On the women's race, we had Sarah Prasala leading out of the swim, and she was followed by Taylor Spivey and Taylor Knibb, but the top 7 were pretty close to each other getting out of the water. Here's where things went not exactly the way we all expected it to be. Taylor Knibb was not off the front, just biking crazy time into the rest of the field. And at the same time, we had Ashley Gentle made it out of the swim in the front group and tapped right onto the back of Taylor Knibb. So it was very cool to see some of the fast runners, Ashley Gentle and Julie Derron, actually holding on to Knibb for the majority of the bike ride. They were within striking distance. It took a long time for Taylor to actually drop them. But once Taylor Knibb went, she went. She put in time very, very quickly and definitely goes to show her strength there. But it was a fun race to see with Julie Derron and Ashley Gentle. It seems like both of them were just, okay, in order to have a chance for this, we need to go on the bike. We need to risk it. We need to actually see if we can hang on here, because if Taylor Knibb gets another 7-10 minute lead, it's just not going to happen. Then we got into the run. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it was very worrisome if you were a Taylor Knibb fan or in Taylor Knibb's camp for the first time all year that she didn't have the swim bike combo within the first 5-10K taken care of, and it was over. So as a fan and as a viewer, it was great to watch. We actually had a race and we weren't concerned about her just running away with it and them not being able to catch her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it was really interesting. Once they got onto the runs, there was a ton of talk of, and even on the commentary, of Julie Derron being like the fastest runner out there. And she really has come out of nowhere to suddenly being one of the most competitive runners. And at least while I was watching, I was saying, well, they have short memories if they're calling Julie Derron like the fastest runner out there, because Ashley Gentle has had some crazy runs throughout the sport. But once they're out on the run, Ashley Gentle started putting time into Taylor Knibb quickly. But it was at a point where if you worked out the maths, it was going to be near sprint finish down to the wire kind of thing with the time she was putting in. And then Julie Derron, who, again, they were talking about as being the fastest runner, she was losing time to Ashley Gentle throughout there. So it seemed like she was going to be off the back and not factor. But in the end, Taylor Knibb she's never been under pressure on these runs. And I think that might be a factor of why we've never seen her as the strongest runner, because she hasn't had to be. And she's definitely put in a lot of work to develop it. But we had Taylor Knibb take the win. And in the closing kilometers, Ashley Gentle, seems like she had some nutrition issues in there and just started to kind of fall apart, walking, stumbling, whether it was the heat or nutrition, it just did not look good on there. And so Julie Derron came up and ran past her in the last couple kilometers to take second place. And then Ashley Gentle came in third. But one of the surprising things too, Flora Duffy, fastest run. Well, I guess I shouldn't say surprising. Flora Duffy came through with the fastest run of the day, moving up into fourth after being 10th off the bike. So that was a pretty impressive performance for her too. But what a race. No point was it the Taylor Knibb show that we've become used to, but she still pulled it out for a well-earned world championship.
She had a great run. I mean, and people talked about it all year. You could kind of worry a little less about her run and that 6 minutes she needed in front of Ash Gentle at the beginning of the year got down to less than 2.5 now, and she was able to hold on. So I don't think she likes to have smaller gaps. I think she would rather have the bigger gaps, but she's got to get used to people catching up to her. Julie Derron's only coming and just starting to come. I find it interesting too. Like the Olympians had the runs down, and it was like, where were the typical runners? Annie Haug wasn't there. I think Kat was like third, but it was Flora Duffy, Taylor Spivey, second fastest run on the day. And man, if she can learn how to ride the TT bike, she's right there on the swim. She's right there on the run. Throw her bike together, and man, she's in this. And she almost crept into the top 10 for contracts and came in late. So yeah, we definitely had some people make up some gaps and earn some money moving from outside the top 10 in. So contracts alone, they're guaranteed. But on top of that, the money that they earn, like Flora Duffy made an extra K alone in her season winnings from moving from 11th to 5th in this season series. So, and on top of that, oh yeah, by the way, here's a annual salary that you get next year, and go book your travel and go do all the racing and training and the aero testing that you need to do, because you now have an actual paycheck that that's huge.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. So many of these athletes, it's like life-changing to be able to know they have that foundation of a solid salary going in, and then the prize money is extra on top of it. Then you can actually plan, like you said, to do that testing, to invest in your sport, to get better and better and really raise the level above. But man, on that run though, was there any point before she stopped to walk that you didn't think Ashley Gentle was gonna be in it to contend?
No, because the gap was coming from, it was what, 2.5 off the bike, somewhere around there.
I know, which is heat, and just you think for sure. Like I was so hoping for that sprint finish at the end. Like just the times were lining up beautifully, and I was like, oh, it was gonna be so good.
And especially the way she caught Julie Derron, it was like, okay, well, she's having a day, because it's not like Julie can't run. And we've seen Julie run Taylor Knibb down and come close to getting back too. So, right, Ashley's having a day, and she's got it under a minute and down to 50, I think, or so that we once saw. And it was like closing quickly. And then it started pulling back the other way. And I don't know if it was the heat or, I mean, because Taylor Knibb obviously had some stomach issues. There were definitely some issues with nutrition and being able to hold down what they were taking in, and probably taking in a lot more than they trained with in that type of heat. All factors combined played into it. On the run, we saw some epic blowups on the run on both men's and women's side of the race.
Yeah. No, it was such a fun race to watch. And we've never seen Taylor Knibb look back so much during an event. Like on the bike, it seemed like she's almost surprised. And we knew the technical parts of it.
She was looking back coming out of the Aussie exit. Holy crap, what is Ash Gentle doing there?
Oh, I know. And like, we knew that she'd be losing some time in the technical parts of the bike, and she definitely could use some work on the technical side of it. But I don't think in any world going in, she thought she was going to have Julie Derron and Ash Gentle on her wheel for that long. That was impressive. And you got to give kudos, like Ash Gentle, she changed up her coaching to more of a cycling focus and going after it. And it just seemed like such this mentality of, I'm going to go all in and win or bust kind of thing. Like, because she wouldn't have, I can't imagine she was putting out the power she usually does to hold on to Taylor Knibb. She had to be going pretty solidly, we'll say.
Yeah, I think she's way more dialed in on the bike right now than she's ever been, and she's trusting her run. She still has time to work on the bike. This is a newer setup and newer situation with her coach, so I think there's a lot of work that will come into next year. And she didn't have much to say in her post today as she was getting ready to fly home, but I think she knows she was close already, and next year, okay, she's got a lot of work to do, but she's not looking forward to that off season. I would imagine it's going to be tough, but she knows she's almost there. Going into that race yesterday, Taylor Knibb was in a different world, and that world got a little smaller on Saturday, and people realize, okay, she's still there, she's still the GOAT, she's still the greatest. And we're getting closer. And now there's a couple of them getting closer at the same time. And now you add some of these other ITU and Olympic athletes coming out that might get contracts next year. And we'll talk about who we think might get some of those hot shots and things like that, or who will accept them. But I think there's going to be a whole new flock of people coming after her too, because she's raced against them in the Olympic distance, and she hasn't done great, but she's been focused a lot on the middle distance. And 70.3 and 100K are definitely her specialty, but more people are getting there.
Yeah, and I'm curious, so she has been testing with Ghibli and stuff too, so I'm wondering if she made any position changes that really helped kind of dial in the aerodynamics of it as well. Because what we're finding is there is some crazy time to be had when you look at the Magnus Dietlevs and stuff of the world, where you have those aerodynamics dialed in. Man, it makes such a big difference on that race speed.
Poor Magnus. We'll get into that.
Oh, I know. Okay, well, let's jump into the men's race here. So the men's race, we had Australia's Aaron Royal led out of the swim, and he was closely followed by Alistair Brownlee, Martin Van Riel. So all the main players, like all the, a lot of the front group were all together in there. We saw a lead group form right away with Van Riel, Brownlee, Théas Margier, and they were definitely pushing it there. We had Brownlee, of course, not free of issues in transitions. So he got a little off the back in that first T1, but managed to make it back up to the group there. And then we had Magnus Ditlev, as we mentioned, he was closing the gap, making his way up. He didn't make it on that front group in the swim. And then he had a mechanical where he had his C-post dropped. Now, that seems to be the mechanical of the day in recent weeks, where happens one or two times. I wonder if there are any male 30 to 34
They jumped in his luggage when he left Kona.
There we go. No, sure. It's so tough with these when you're taking bikes apart, putting them back together. And those speed bumps, those were a great...
Serious bunny hops.
Right? Like, you saw, there were some very well executed bunny hops, and then there were some very not...
Martin's bunny hop late was really, really cool because they replayed that one. Kyle Smith had some good ones.
Yeah. It was definitely the way to go, not put any pressure. And then you see, especially with Magnus too, he's got a whole lot of weight on the back with those 3 bottles and stuff too. Like man. So that was a bummer to see that he had to pull over. He lost about a minute and a half pulling over to the mechanical assistance with the bike techs there, but they got him back off and riding. That's going to be hard to come back to, but
it's a minute and a half of stop time, but in real lifetime, that's even another 30, 45 seconds mentally. Your body's cooling off. Like, it's not easy.
And then when you're going hard and then go to a full stop and then start trying to ride hard again, that lactic burn is no joke. That is painful when you're trying to jump back in there because they're not riding easy. But yeah, so they head out on the run, and we had Van Riel and Rico Bogan, who all throughout the commentary, they were writing him off completely because traditionally he has not performed well in the heat. We had Alistair Brownlee again had a little bit of an issue in T2, so he was not with there. He was a couple seconds back from the front of the group there, which even he says himself afterwards might have been a good thing because then he started to run his own pace instead. But we had Van Riel and Rico Bogan. They were running head to head.
And Kyle too, so it was like San Francisco all over again, really.
Yeah, until Kyle started to drop off the back a little bit. But like the whole time, everyone was just like, no, Rico Bogan, he's going to melt in the heat. He's going to shut down. Young kid, he hasn't figured it out yet. And they're like, he's still there. Wait, still there? Wait a second, this is actually a race. And then Kyle Smith drops off the back and Rico's still gone. And I think that really shocked a lot of people when it came in. And in the end, we would see Martin Van Riel and Rico Bogan into the last couple kilometers until Van Riel did what he does the real deal, surged ahead in the couple kilometers before the finish line to take the win. We had Rico Bogan held on strong for second place, and the surprise was where Alistair Brownlee came from 4th place and actually ended up overtaking Kyle Smith, but not before giving everyone another heart attack.
Literally right before.
Oh my goodness, just about to pass Kyle Smith and trips on some gravel, goes down to his knees on the run, and they're like a kilometer, 2 kilometers out from the finish line, has to bridge back up to Kyle Smith and manages to take 3rd place in the end with Kyle Smith in 4th. What a race. Like, that was so good to watch. Definitely was not boring.
And the other storylines too, which I think the T100 did a very good job, and we talked about this before, of capsulating and capturing the information on where this impacted the top 10.
Yeah.
And you could see the top 10 changing and the top 2 and 3. And I mean, you're talking 70 grand between first and second. You're talking another 50 grand between second and third. And with Kyle and Rico and Magnus dropped, like that, it all impacted it. And then each move in each position changed it again. And there was a chance that Kyle might have dropped out of number 2 and he was able to hold on to that. And you talk about Magnus having to stop full for a minute and a half. Well, the other side of this is when you fall and trip like Alistair did and you get right back up, there's almost an actual positive impact to the adrenaline, that burst that you get, and your body actually picks back up pretty quickly and you almost get a power boost from it. Hit that mushroom sign. It's interesting to see. And I think he actually might have even mentioned it, but I said something to my wife when we were watching it. That was something that you could almost see it kick him right back into gear, and he never lost any momentum. It was like Kyle Smith saw him go down and thought he was going to be okay, and nope. It was probably another 20 seconds and Alistair was by him after that next hill, which, man, that hill was brutal every time they had to go through it.
Oh, nasty. Like, there's the uphill they're slogging up, but that downhill, if you've trashed your quads, would be painful.
And finding the little areas of shade that they were trying to get. Kyle Smith was up on the curb trying to find it.
The whole time. Man, it sounds like they were very much on top of having ice everywhere. We saw a lot of ice and helmets, just trying to keep athletes cool throughout it because they were racing in the heat of the day with some of the, I guess, road closures and having the amateur race in the morning. So they were starting in the peak of the heat of the day, which a lot of the conversation going into it was all the athletes saying, like, this is a lot hotter and more humid than they thought it would be. I think the assumption was a lot more dry in Dubai, but man, it sounds like there were some nasty temperatures out there.
A lot of ice and helmets, and ice that wouldn't come out of helmets as they tried to put them. So a lot of extra dumping of the helmets until you actually got all the ice out.
Yeah. Well, and that's another one. We had Sam Long. He improved his swim from last. He wasn't 6 minutes back. He was 4 minutes back, which, you think a race in the heat, only 4 minutes back. I thought we'd see Sam Long featuring a lot more in this, but again, it seems like
he lost time on the bike.
Yeah, which you don't usually see from, what do you call himself, the strongest legs in triathlon.
Yeah.
In there.
So it does show you, I mean, that lead pack was, 6 guys up front for the most part of the bike. That dynamic is hard for him to compete with. And in Miami, it was an oval and there wasn't as much of that. And he was able to catch up, and because nobody was really drafting in that race. But when you get 6 guys running off the front together, working together, the only thing that I heard coming out of it, that I think Martin might have been the one that mentioned it, he would have ridden a little differently now that he's done that race, is not be 5th or 6th wheel and let others dictate the U-turns and the turnarounds and get up front, so that you're taking your speed into those turns and not letting others. So it certainly impacted the front of the race in those aspects. He might have ridden a little differently if he had to do it again. Sam, to not drop into the 2s or 3 minute back on a bike ride, that's the dynamics of the race, but I think it's also he's just tired.
Yeah.
He's put a lot of miles on those legs this year, and he even started talking about in his latest YouTubes leading into this and his prep for it, he'd write out a schedule, and if he felt like he wanted to change it that morning, he would. And it was just like he started going off a feel, and it's like, imagine if you let all your athletes go off a feel. It's like, I know you know what you're doing, Sam. I know how you know, like, how to trust your body, but there's a reason why people have coaches. Like, they know how to tell you how you're supposed to feel as well.
Yeah, and I think where I was trying to question if he would have a good race or not is how many times he mentioned that he's been racing since early season. Like, it was something that he was constantly bringing up and talking. It's like, okay,
letting it out. Yeah.
Pretty tired.
Well, it impacted him for sure, because if you stuck around and watched the full post race, man, full on buckets of tears coming out of, and he just couldn't hold it together. And you don't see that side of him too often at all, especially when he not moved up, but he held on to 6th overall in the season series. So he's got a contract next year. He still made a good amount of money. He didn't go from 3rd or 4th in the series up to 1st or 2nd, but that was a long shot. And I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen going into this race, but I get it. He expects to be top 1, 2, 3 in the world, and he didn't show that. And he spent a lot of time away from his family trying to race this year. But he should be proud of the season he had too, because you saw those guys who had good early seasons, they locked in their contracts for next year.
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
huge piece of, we just talked about on the ladies side, right? So Magnus Ditliff, Sam Long, Yuri Kulin all won early season, or all raced well early season. Sam had back-to-back seconds. Magnus won Miami. Yuri won Singapore. These guys are all contract next year. Sam Laidlow, late in the year, showed up and won London, but he finished 11th. It's not guaranteed a contract next year. It's Sam, he'll get one. But Freddie Funk showed up there, and he's like, I'm getting in the top 10. And sure enough, got into the top 10 a week after getting married.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why people enjoy Sam so much, is that he does wear his heart on his sleeve. He does talk about what he's going through. He opens up a lot to the audience. So that was something, it was kind of uncomfortable to watch, but I think stuff like that really just shows how real this is, how much it means to them. It's not just a race day, one and done, move on and stuff. It's, it's providing for your family, reaching your goals, meeting your own expectations. And that vulnerability was, I think, good to see, and just see how much it means to him, right?
Yeah, and I think as a broadcasting crew, they're trying to figure out what's about to come too, because the interviews before that were a whole bunch of F-bombs that they didn't want dropped on air either. So,
well, let's talk about the commentary and the race production side of things. So obviously this has been the first year that the T100 has come through, and they have been progressively getting better and better as they go through the different races. But I think this is the first one where I can say they nailed it. Like, all the things that we've been talking about and wanting to see, like having the commentators offsite, like on location talking together, that went fantastic. But then you have down at the site, like the athletes who are supposed to be racing, like the Lucy Charles, Sam Laidlows, who have so much insight and are so close to this series, providing just on-site commentary of what's going on, and just the back and forth with a couple little cut-ins of the pre-taped interviews. Like, they really covered it well, I found, and the commentary team is really starting to find their groove and how they work together in it, which was fun to see as well. And then we had a bunch of the timing things that we've been asking for. Like you said, they've actually had the rankings of, if the virtual standings right now, if everyone finishes where they are at this moment, here's how the series actually finishes out. And we're getting timing splits. Like, it all seemed to come together in a way we haven't seen before, which made it a lot more entertaining to watch.
Yeah. The only thing I did wonder is how accurate the heart rate meters were at certain times, because Martin Villarreal was this close to dying like 10 times with 99%.
Yeah, and I think because it's athlete provided thresholds where you're like,
But he would go from like 90% to 99, so you knew it was just a glitch, most likely. But no, I thought the overall commentating was really good. And you got to remember, too, they're trying to attract a bigger audience, and not everyone is listening to triathlon podcasts and hosting triathlon podcasts or racing triathlons, right? They're trying to make this educational for those people who are just new to the sport. And I thought, like you said, adding the Lucys and the Sams perspective puts it on a level of like, what are the athletes thinking? And you and I have that already in our heads. Like, we know what they're thinking. We know what we think they're thinking in transition. But they kind of laid it out. This is how we would think. This is what I would be thinking.
No, I think that makes a big difference. And there was really, really good to see. The only thing, I think they had their run paces off in there. So if you looked at the run paces going through it, you'd see people making up time, like Ashley Gentle was making up time on Taylor Knibb, but she'd show her pace slower in there. I think they had like the average run pace going through it. And it was just like, no, that can't be right.
Yeah, and a lot of times it was based off of the timing mats and hitting the different checkpoints too, where it would update and stuff. And I think there were times where the leader wasn't the leader and the pass had already happened and things like. So those are things that, I mean, eventually those have to get worked out. I mean, we know we talk about that with Ironman all the time, and it's like, how can you not have the leaderboard be? T100 definitely got better this year as the season went along, and it was much, much more enjoyable to watch. And I thought the way they've laid out their courses and make it easier to have that looped atmosphere, it is a fan-friendly, and it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it seems like it all kind of came together. And this time it wasn't, because I watched obviously on delay. I was not up at 2 a.m. watching the race. As much as I love triathlon and geeking out on this stuff, I was not going to be up at 2 a.m. to watch it. So I remember one of the previous races, I think it was London, where it was too late for me to watch. They kept is showing, use this QR code to see all the data and what's going on, because they didn't have it on the screen. I'm like, well, I can't do that because I'm not watching it live. So I don't know what's going on in there. So this time it all kind of came together where I did not feel the urge whatsoever to try to look at that, because they were actually relaying the information in a really good way. And they had split screens going on and showing not just the leader, showing they had Flora Duffy on screen a lot as she's running up through the back. So I think they really nailed the race production this time. Like, it was head and shoulders above what they've done in the past. So that's exciting to see.
Yeah, and with 20 racers, you should be able to tell the story of most of the racers, because they've all had a season-long story for the most part. And I think there were a few pieces where they missed. Okay, where is Sam Long? Why isn't Sam Long coming? Like there's some, like Paula Findlay, normally in the top 4 or 5 at every one of these races. Where's she? Like, why is she dropping back? And what does she look like? Why is she like? Those are the types of things I thought that if somebody was not where they normally are, what happened? And just give a quick look in. It's not like you don't have a camera there. You've got stationary cameras along the course, and these people are all doing, 6 loops, 7 loops. So I think on the run, you could have seen a little bit more coverage of the back, and just to give an update, like, hey, this is your athlete, your favorite person, and this is who you follow. They know people like Paula have a huge following of their own with the TTL brand and people watching for that. So, like, why not give a little chime in to things like that and grab a little bit more audience appreciation?
Yeah, definitely. And then the only thing where it really didn't go well in the broadcast was just the spectators on the side of the road. That's the tough part with kind of going to some of these iconic locations. If it's a little bit outside of the city center, people aren't triathlon geeks like us, so they're probably not going to travel. Like, there's like a 25-minute drive to get out to where they were to watch the race. And it's tough with the age group racing too. Like, it's good if they're having it on site, but if you're racing on Sunday, you're probably not going to be out Saturday spectating in the heat all day watching these athletes. You have places like London, there was a ton of people on site watching it because it was right in the middle of London. San Francisco, you would have had more if the weather wasn't so terrible, but that was the whole weather delay in there. But a lot of the locations, they do want to have them in these iconic places where, unfortunately, that means sometimes it's not the most accessible. And if you want a sport to feel big and important and something that's a thing, the audience definitely makes a big difference.
So, I mean, you want to make it, and they've talked about the festival aspect of it all, and you're going to have one of those next year in a bunch of them. They want them all to be that. I think in Dubai, because I know a friend of mine was there that week for a blockchain, like Web3 conference in that same hotel and resort area. Okay, well, this is what this area typically is used for, conferences and events. Have a huge triathlon conference or something like that. Bring in the industry and attract them, because otherwise, you're like you said, you're not going to get people to come out to this area of Dubai or travel to that area of Dubai to go see this race. I know there wasn't a lot of extra time to plan it this year because it wasn't supposed to be the grand final either. So there is that factor. This ended up being the final race when they thought there was still going to be another one. And I think if maybe they made it more of that festival atmosphere and made a big expo around it, because that's what this place is built for. And then, okay, at least you're bringing in triathlon fans or endurance sports fans, something like that, of that nature. And buy out the whole hotel and don't let a tech conference be the people that are out there cheering, trying to figure out.
They're not going to be out there.
How do they clip into their feet and their shoes and what is going on?
Not a lot of crypto triathlete.
There's some, but not a lot.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look. So with the T100 series, beyond trying to win the race and get some prize money here, athletes were racing to get into the top 10 so that they could get an automatic contract for next year. So it sounds like the top 10 get an automatic contract. The next 6 are decided by the PTO World Rankings and stand-up performances. And then they'll have 4 hotshot members as well. Next year, we're looking at the T100 series. For the men's side, we'll start out with the guaranteed contracts go to Martin Van Riel, well earned, Kyle Smith, Rico Bogan, Magnus Dietlev, Alistair Brownlee, Sam Long, Matthias Margier, Peter Heinrich, Yuri Kulin, and Frederick Funk. So they will be locked in next year. And we had we had a question from Instagram there asking, who do we think will take the contract and who won't? I have to say, from that top 10, I don't see anyone turning it down.
I don't see anyone turning it down either. Like it's guaranteed money especially on the men's side, being what we believe is still going to be a Nice World Championship. A lot of rumblings about that potentially changing too, but being a Nice year, there are some, and Sam Long's already qualified for Nice. So does that impact him or not? Probably not.
You have guaranteed money.
It's an annual salary that is not offered by anyone else in the sport, and T100 is doing that. So I think all the 10 men are going to. Now, when you talk about Kona on the women's side, and I'll run down the top 10 there, you got Taylor Knibb, Ash Gentle, Julie Derron, Kat Matthews, Flora Duffy, Lucy Byram, again, another one who had a good season early on and kind of just showed up every week.
Yeah, consistent.
Laura Phillip, Indy Lee, Imogen Simmons, and Paula Finley held on to 10th, almost dropping out of the top 10. But if Paula Finley's going to race triathlon next year, she's going to take her contract. I think most of these athletes are taking this contract. I can't see any of the women not taking it either.
Yeah, you'll definitely see, like, there's
maybe Laura Phillip.
Yeah, I was going to say Laura Phillip, you question what her priority will be next year, but even Kat Matthews, she'll definitely take a contract, but what are her priorities next year? I think most of these athletes within the top 10, especially on the women's side, their focus is still middle distance, less so than Ironman outside of, like you said, the Kat Matthews and Laura Phillips. But I think most of them are going to be dialed in for next year to really take advantage of it. Because like you said, it's guaranteed money and contract going ahead. What was interesting from this season, though, we only had 11 of the 20 female athletes actually fulfill their contracts this year, which was surprising to see. Now, 2 of them were due to pregnancy and mat leave and stuff, totally fair. But we saw, I guess, a lot fewer women actually fulfilling their contracts than I thought we would on the women's side, especially. And then on the men's side, I think we had 6 didn't fulfill them either. And a lot of that was due to the injury clause that they were using. So what do we think with PTO? Are these people ever going to get invited back, or what do you think?
So you're looking at like the Annie Hoggs of the world, and M. Pallet Brown was close.
Yeah. With Lucy Charles Barkley, but
Lucy's still going to be one of the 4.
For sure.
I would imagine Taylor Spivey's going to be one of the 4. Annie Hogg, I don't know. I don't know if they would. Annie Hogg's going to be on, do I have one more Kona World Championship in me?
Wow.
And I think they know that. They've probably had these conversations. It sounds like they had plenty of conversations with her throughout the year. I don't know how many of the 11 through 20 athletes are going to be part of the next 10 that we're talking about. So the 6 that are part of the rankings, and then we got to wait until after 70.3 Worlds to figure out what the rankings look like before they announce that. And then the 4 hotshots. 4 hotshots are going to go to your Olympic athletes if they take it, right?
Yeah,
so the Georgia Taylor Browns of the world, and whether or not they want to take it, that would be my guess. Yeah.
No, definitely. And I'm curious to see with those 6 that they base off rankings. I heard it said like rankings and stand-up performances. Are they going to just roll down the list, or like a PTO rankings from the bottom ranked person who's already in and kind of roll down it? Or are they going to kind of pick and choose people that they can validate as having stand-up performances and still being on the rankings? That curious to see.
They definitely left it open, right, to standout performances. And so, okay, well, Annie Hogg definitely is going to fall into that category if they wanted her to. She had plenty of standout performances this year. She just didn't have them at T100. It'll be interesting. I think Laura Phillip would be my female who I don't know if is going to take a contract. And here's my thinking behind that. I know it's crazy to not take a contract for the year, but her thing has always been to win the world championship. And now her name's on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Winning it back to back is a different level. And what happened to Lucy Charles this year trying to win a second world title back to back, focusing on the T100 and trying to drop into Nice? Couldn't do it. So does Laura Phillips say, I'm taking off from the T100 and I'm going to win Kona, and then I'm going to get offered a T100 contract the following year anyways because I'm a back-to-back world champ?
And that's the thing. It's not just winning the world champs again. It's winning the world champs in Kona.
In Kona.
And that is
She hasn't done that.
a different beast, right? That is, you can win a world championships. We all know, like Kristen Blumenfeld won a Ironman world championships and stuff, but it's still Kona. Kona is the absolute pinnacle there. So to be able to win back to back, and it sounds like next year too. So they're aiming to have 8 to 10 T100 races. And the last numbers I've been hearing is that they'll have to do 6 races to be eligible to be into the final rankings, right? So now you're talking there's a lot more racing that she would have to do to be able to fulfill that contract. Now, is it worth putting that time in the T100, just going through the paces? If Kona is that focus, I think that's where we're going to see a big delineation between the long course athletes who are doing T100 and the middle distance athletes that start to specialize in this and make it their thing. I think we're going to see that Ironman Pro Series and the T100 series separate out even more, because you're just not going to be able to do 6 T100 races competitively and race 3 Ironmans and the 70.3s. That's a lot.
It is a lot. And here's the follow-up to all that. Then on the other side of the ball, you've got probably the richest human in triathlon at the end of this season coming out of Taupo, would be my guess, is Kat Matthews.
Yeah.
She did both series, 4th in the T100, and she's about to win the Pro Series, and 2nd at the World Champs in Nice. And she's had a heck of a season and done it all. So
not the only one who's done it all and pulled it off.
That's the thing. There's one person on both the male and female side that you could say has had a year like she's had.
Magnus has had a solid year there too.
Yeah, and Magnus, but he's not going to show up 70.3 Worlds. He's not going to be in the Pro Series.
True. And
she's walking home with a heck of a paycheck at the end of this year.
I mean,
with a guaranteed check for next year.
Right. Well, that's the crazy part. So yeah, we definitely, and we saw a lot of pros go for it. Like we saw Fenella Langridge, she allegedly turned down a pro contract for T100, and she was going all in on the Ironman series, and that didn't work out. So I think, especially in triathlon, where it's still such a small sport and so much can go wrong, guaranteed money is a rarity and something that is very, very, very hard to pass up.
By the way, there's one person we haven't mentioned on the female side, and we've talked about the maternity leave aspect. Triathlon Insights put this up, and they had kind of a poll of who people thought would be added, that or should be added, and they put out the results of it, and there was a name missing. I was like, Holly Lawrence, who had a great Miami race for the T100, and then announced she was pregnant and has been gone for the season, but keep seeing her social, and she's back training and riding and being a mom. And how does she impact into this next year as far as standout performance? Miami could be considered that a hot shot. I don't know how does Holly Lawrence get offered a contract next year?
I'm curious to see. I can't see them not, especially with how much they put around supporting like female athletes and having the mat leave options in there. I think there's a lot of like her points will kind of transition over having that mat leave or that ability to jump back in. But I don't see, from a PR perspective, I do not see a world where they do not offer her another contract, like from a purely PR side, right? She absolutely deserves it and should be on that start list. But yeah, I'd be hard pressed to not see them give her one.
I'm actually intrigued to see what kind of season she could have too. So I'm like excited to see her come back.
It's so funny. You see a big divide between some women just get stronger and better and faster after having kids, and some go the other way. Like it's really, it goes one or two ways very significantly. You don't see kind of average performances afterwards. So it'd be cool to see her have a comeback and have a really great continued career afterwards, because she definitely keeps it interesting.
Yeah. And I think the one last thing I'll say about the series too is, man, you could see those Kona guys yesterday in Dubai literally filling out the end of the race. Like, when are they going to finish? Are they going to get here? It's Rudy Von Berg, Leon Chevalier. It was like Leon still moved up in the top 20, so he actually made money yesterday for the season series. But man, those Kona people were pulling up the rear at the end of Dubai. Again, kudos to Magnus for the day he had. Without the mechanical, it is a different day and a different race and a different ending to the season series.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about it. We did want to have one special mention here with a race going on this weekend. We have Ironman Cozumel, and it's not one of the ones in the Pro Series. But there is a name on there that some people I think will be very excited and curious to see if he actually comes to the start line. Is the real deal. Martin Van Riel is on the start list to do his first Ironman in Cozumel, which seems to be a common one for the first Ironmans here. But what do we think? Is Martin Van Riel actually going to show up to do an Ironman and get a knee spot for next year?
So I think when we had him on the episode a few weeks ago, and you go back to listen to that, I think if you have been watching our social, you've seen us share that episode as one of the new YouTube options, and it's also on Spotify and all other streaming, but check that out. But on that episode, I believe he talked about how fun Nice would be and how well it suits him. So if the race is actually in Nice, like we think it's supposed to be, that does suit him well. So why not go try and qualify for it? And he's not in the Pro Series, so what does 70.3 Worlds mean? He's already the best K guy in the world. He's already won a world championship this year. Why not go try and qualify for Nice? And in a race where you know you can climb that mountain and descend with the best of them.
And you know what? He's fit. He's ready. The start list, like it's a solid start list. But if he has to get something like a top 5 for a spot for Nice next year, I think he's absolutely capable of it. Obviously, we haven't seen him at Ironman yet, but I would not be in any way, shape, or form surprised to see that he just smashed out an Ironman.
No, I think he's like 6 spots too. So, I mean, could he finish in the top 6, having a so-so day just by staying aero on the bike and going for a jog? Probably.
We get to see. Well, definitely.
And he's heat trained.
Yeah. The heat won't be any problem after this weekend.
No.
Well, we will definitely follow along and let you guys know next week. We're going to have a little kind of break in the racing with, we got Busselton coming up the week or December 1st in there, and then we got 70.3 Worlds a couple weeks afterwards. So still a bit of racing to come. We're going to keep putting up those question posts on our Instagram. So if you have any training or racing questions, we have experienced coaches on here too, so we can jump into some of your questions as the racing starts to quiet down over the off season. But we are not done with the racing yet, which sounds absolutely crazy to see. We got one more Pro Series race and then another World Championships to go. And I cannot wait to see the start list for the 70.3 World. See who's
It's going to be crazy. It's stacked with a lot of these middle distance, short distance racers coming off of the Olympics. And we'll have a better idea at the end of, 2 weeks from now with Western Australia or that race, the last of the Pro Series. It'll give us an idea of where the points are going into 70.3 Worlds. But yeah, we'll have a good preview show for that race next week and talk about that and the impacts that it might have on the overall Pro Series. But yeah, I think 70.3 Worlds, as much as there are people who aren't going, there's still a crazy stacked list.
Curious to see just who survives it at this point.
Right?
We saw some tired faces here this weekend, so
yeah.
I'd be curious to see who shows up and actually makes it. But that'll be us for this week. We will be back again next week to chat all things triathlon. So like we said, go check out the YouTube page. Give us a subscribe there. It'll help us out a lot as we try to grow this and spend more time talking about triathlon and geeking out on it with all of you. Till then, though, have a great night, Josh.
Awesome. You too. Thanks, everyone.